And this is not mapped so much, really. I'm going to show you just one section, and I'll tell you why it's important. It's more of a story going back to like kind of the regular text of the. I wanted to show you why this comes up over here. So we're going to talk about an interesting story with the area called Hebron. On this map, you can see Hebron. It's a little. This is right where Hebron is, and it's right in the tribe of Yehuda. That's important to understand today's Chumash, okay? So today's Navi, sorry. So let's learn inside, and you'll see this interesting story. These are who inherited in Israel proper, in the land of Canaan, in the western side of the Jordan River. And now he gives you some more information. How did they know who got where, right? How did they know who got where? So when Moses was alive, he divided up those properties that we just spoke about. But who's deciding who gets where? Elazar HaKohen, so he's telling you who was involved in the dividing the land was Aaron's son, whose name was Elazar, the Kohen serving Kohen at the time, right? Aaron passed away. So Elazar wore the breastplate. And we learned about this in the Chumash. He's just mentioning here again that the breastplate would say which area, who gets which area, who decided which tribe gets which area. Also, Yeshua bin Nun, obviously Joshua, the leader of the Jewish people, was involved. As well as the leaders of each of the tribes were involved. If I remember correctly, also, and as we see in verse 2, not just was there the high priest and Joshua and the leaders of each tribe, but as we say in verse 2, Begoyrel, through a lottery. They had a lottery, and they had the 12 sections divided up, and each, I think, leader of each tribe would pull out a lottery, and it would also like come from heaven. There would be an announcement and say, yes, this tribe. So there was no fighting. Everybody knew who got which section in Israel. As Hashem commanded Moshe, through the lottery and through the high priest, the breastplate, and the high priest, the Choshen, you should divide up to the 9.5 lands. Now we'll decide who will get what. Now, why is it only 9.5? He's repeating. Because Moshe already gave inheritance of the 2 tribes of Chatzi Hamata and a half Me'ever Yarden on the eastern side. He already took care of 2.5. And the Levites are not getting anything. So we have left 9.5 tribes there. Why is Menashe getting his own land? Because Joseph is split into 2. If you remember, right? Yaakov told Joseph that Joseph will become like a firstborn and will get a double portion, and both of his kids will get their own property in Israel. Both his sons, Menashe and Ephraim, who were born before Yaakov came down to Egypt. That whole story there to visit his son Yosef, he's giving those 2 sons, Menashe and Ephraim, the land. But then it should be 13. Why is it only 12? So he keeps on reiterating. We didn't give land to the Levites, so cut out one of the tribes. So where did they live? Remember, I said we'll answer that question. He gave them cities. And around those cities was a lot of like open farmland. In order for them to have for their cattle places for their cattle to surround. Now, why was there 48 cities for the Levites split up? Again, because the Levites are the teachers. So it's very good to have the teachers and the people that are inspiring the rest of the Jewish people split up among all the cities in order that people can come and learn. In fact, 6 of the cities, and we're going to learn about it, which is going to be part of the division, is where somebody killed somebody by mistake, will have to run, and his punishment will be he has to live with the Levites, with these great scholars, and learn from their actions in order to bring holiness to his life. Very interesting. So the Levites, here's the answer to the question. The Levites are not getting, but Levites will get not like a whole section to invest in real estate. They'll have 48 cities for them to live in. And around those 48 cities where they live in, there'll be open space because they probably have animals too, and maybe to plant some stuff and for their animals to live in, and we'll discuss that when we get there. And the Jewish people divided the land. But first we have a story to start it off with. Who's the first one that we're going to talk about the land? We're going to talk about the tribe of Yehuda. One of the commentaries I saw say why, maybe Reuven makes sense why we're starting with Reuven, because he was the oldest. But why is the first one that's getting property in Israel, in Canaan proper on the western side of the Jordan River? Why is it Yehuda? Why is it Judah? Why is he the one that we're starting off? And one of the commentators said something interesting. The Jews are going to sin. There's no question about it when they move into Israel. They have to learn to apologize, to recognize when you do something wrong, accept it, and learn to become and grow better. That's why the first 2 people that are going to get land are 2 famous people that sinned, Reuven and Yehuda, and they apologize for their sins. So as a message to the Jewish people is that the first one we're giving land to, that we're dividing up on the eastern side, it's to Reuven. and in Israel, on the western side of Israel, it will be Yehuda, because both of them, although they sin, they apologize, and Jewish people should learn to do this when they're moving into Israel now. Okay, so the children of Yehuda, before they get their land, is something very important. They have one specific city that they need to make sure is within their section of land. The Gilgal, they came to the city of Gilgal. Gilgal is right north of the Dead Sea, where Yeshua and all the Jewish people lived at the time, or at least started off, and that's where the Jewish people started off as they finished conquering Israel, and they're now going to settle and move before they move to each of their own locations. So a man from the tribe of Yehuda, a famous person called Kaleb ben Yefuna. Who was he? If you guys remember, he was Kaleb, the son of Yefuna. He was one of the two spies that went to Israel. There were 12 spies that went to Israel. 10 came back with a bad message, and 2 came back with a good message. Who were the 2 people? One was Joshua, who's the leader of the Jewish people now, and Kaleb was also, it came back with a good message. Now, Kaleb, very interesting here. So we're going to see something interesting about Kaleb. So he goes over, he calls him Knizi. Kaleb ben Yefuna. His father is Yefuna, who was a Knizi. What does that mean he was Knizi? So the commentaries explain there's going to be a famous judge called Knaz from the Jewish people. His mother remarried, I guess after his father passed away, his mother remarried a person called Knaz, and she must have been young, because she had a son together with Kaleb's father, with Kaleb's mother. His father passed away, or his father, I don't know, whatever happened to his father. His mother remarried this guy called Knaz, and he's a very holy judge. So out of respect for him, they called Kaleb in the Chumash the son of Yefuna, but the Knizite also the stepson of a guy called Knaz. And he goes over to Yeshua, who he was partners, I was going to say, in the mitzvah, who came out with a good report in Israel. He goes over to Yeshua and he tells him, Ata Yadata, Yeshua, remember my co-spy. And remember, everybody else passed away. There's only 2 guys left that's older, because everybody passed away that was over 20. I think it was 20, right? And that was over 20 years old. In the desert, they all passed away. These are the 2 remaining survivors. We're going to see how old he was. He's an old man. He's 85 years old there, and he goes to this older guy alive, who's 85 years old, Yeshua, and he says, as a davar shedibra Hashem Moshe, Yeshua, remember what Moses spoke to our teacher Moshe. God told Moshe, Isha Likim, Moses, who was a man of God, about me, what God told him about you, but Kadesh Barnea, in the city called Kadesh Barnea. That's where the whole story, where the Jews sent the spies to go check out Israel, and the disaster happened. That was in the desert, in the Sinai desert, in Kadesh Barnea. You remember what happened there? And he gives them some numbers in timing here, and they're very important to understand. You're going to see information in history. Look at these numbers. It's very good to know people's ages, because it helps us out. Let's see what happens. He says, Ben Arbayim Shana. He says, we were 40 years old. Anoichi. Remember, I was a 40-year-old man. That's how old I am now, actually. So it was the same age as I am now. And he says, I was a 40-year-old man. When Moses, the servant of God, sent me, Kadesh Barnea, from that city in the Sinai desert, in the north of the Sinai desert, Kadesh Barnea, the Ragal Saaretz, remember that famous story, to go and spy out the land of Israel. And I came back and I said, I told them what was in my heart. Very interesting Rashi over here. And this thing came up a number of times already. Listen to what he's saying, fascinating. If I want to bring it into politics, then maybe in a moment, maybe I'll bring it into today's politics. But I want to bring a lesson from here. Rashi brings something interesting. He says, remember, let me quote the words again. Kaleb tells Yeshua, he says, remember when I was 40-year-old man, and Moses sent me from the city of Kadesh Barnea to go and scout out the land of Israel. And I shared with everyone what was in my heart. Rashi says something very interesting here. He says that I hid. Nobody knew what was in my heart. It was a secret. Because when the 10 tribes spies went to scout out the land of Israel, Kaleb pretended that he was with them in the plan against Moshe. In other words, all the other 10 spies were like, no, we are coming back with a bad report. It was clear to everyone. And Yeshua, who everybody knew was like, I would say, like the pet student, the goody-goody, the holy man. It wasn't even a question. Yeshua was with Moshe. That wasn't an option. But Kaleb, what did he think? So the 10 spies, your Kaleb never let on. He says, I'm with you. Yes, I don't know. He never said, I disagree, and I think let Israel land. I'm agreeing with everyone that we shouldn't go to Israel. It's a terrible land. But in his heart, he never believed that. And it's when they got to Israel, to speak to the Jewish people, and they were all freaking out. Kalev got up and he said, "Guys, I'm going to tell you what I really believe. I kept it to myself. I'm going to announce it here publicly, and everyone should know Israel's a safe place." But he didn't want to speak about it before. Why not? So I was saying a lesson. Sometimes in life, when you can't convince people and you can't get your message through, be quiet. I was telling my son this, my son this message on Shabbos right after I learned this. I told my son Nachum, I said, Nachum, not everybody's ready to accept what you're saying. In life, sometimes in life, you have to keep quiet and you don't say anything, don't share it. If people are not ready to accept it, you don't say it. How would I connect this to today's politics? I don't know if it's really connected, but there's been we know that Rabbi Lazar is very close to Putin, and he's in a very, very tough situation. I don't know if you saw, very scary. He came out with a letter pretty much without directly saying Putin's name, but he basically said that the war has to stop and we're not allowed to kill anyone. The Chabad rabbi, it's very interesting, in Kiev, Rabbi Osman, I think is his name, came a very strong video in Russian. It's translated now already, against kind of, where's the rabbis from Russia? That what are they saying? And they're not saying anything. And the next day, Rabbi Lazar came out with a very clear letter, but it's very dangerous to do, obviously extremely dangerous to do. We know what happens when people start up with him. So it's an interesting thing in life. Sometimes in life, you have to know where you have to speak out, but sometimes in life, you can't speak out. You don't have a choice where your words won't be heard. So just I don't know if it's really connected, but we see here that Kalev kept to himself until he spoke up. Nobody knew really what was in his heart. And that's why it says here, he spoke what was in his heart, just connecting the Navi to some ideas that's going on in current events. Let's continue along. Kalev is telling Yeshua, remember what happened? I came in and I shared what was in my heart, and my brothers who were with me, the other spies, they melted the hearts of the people, they freaked them out, they scared them. And I went after Hashem, our God, I fulfilled my mission that I was here for. And what happened when me and you and I came back with a good report? Moshe swore. If the land that your feet will set, and you will make it to Israel, and you will come to the land, I will give you a special portion to your children forever, because you fulfilled the will of Hashem and you went after the will of Hashem, so you're going to get land. So my dear Yeshua, remember, Moshe swore that I will get a special section. Now, which section will he get? You know where he got? He went to Hebron to pray. Why did he go to Hebron? Maybe this is probably why he even wanted Hebron, because who was buried in Hebron? We know that the great tzaddikim were buried in Hebron. This is probably one of the most earliest periods where in the Torah, actually, this is a very interesting story where someone goes to pray by, we just went to the Rebbe yesterday to pray by a tzaddik. It's in the Chumash. We see that he went to Hebron to daven there, that he shouldn't be convinced because he was going to be brainwashed by the other 10 spies. It's very easy to get caught up in what they wanted to say, but he didn't get caught up. He went to Hebron, and no one else wanted to go to Hebron because there were big giants over there. It was very dangerous to go there, but he was gutsy and he had the courage and he went there. And therefore, this gift now will be that he will get Hebron. So this is all connected to today's Navi. Why? Because the first tribe they're going to give land in Israel proper will be the tribe of Yehuda. Kalev is from Yehuda, so Kalev has to make sure that Hebron that he will get will be in that section of where Yehuda will get. And now Hashem kept me alive. I'm one of the only, he's the only person alive, him and Yeshua, the only, I think, of the men at least that are alive past this age. And here's where numbers are going to be important and interesting. He says, Hashem kept me alive for 45 years. So 45 years. So he went to spy out when he was 40 years old. That was the second year that the Jews left Egypt. They were supposed to go. If the spies wouldn't have messed up, they would have gone straight into Israel. There would have been the second year, and that would have been it. The Jews would have gone in, but we know what happened. And we're going to see actually another interesting reason today, a fascinating reason Rashi gives us is why the Jews had to be in the desert for an extra 38 years. Bottom line is, I was 48. I was 40 years old then. And then it's another 45 years from then, which means that he's 85 now, like we're going to see. 40 plus 45 is 85. But what does that mean to us that it's 85? So the Jews were that he's 85 years old and that it's 45 years from the story of the spies. We know the Jews were total in the desert, for 40 years. Minus the first 2 years, there is 38 years. Minus 2 from the 40 general years, there's 38 years left. So if it's been 45 years since that story, and the Jews were 38 years left in the desert, what happened means that we're still missing 7 years. 38 plus 7 will equal 45. So what happened? When are those 7 years? So this is where very interesting it comes in play. Because 38 years till Joshua took the Jews into Israel, and from this we learn that it took 7 years for Joshua to conquer, which means the whole first section of the Navi that we've been studying till now, till chapter 13, chapter 14 over here, they were conquering Israel, that we learned about them conquering Israel. We don't know how long that took. The Torah doesn't give us numbers. Well, now we know, but based on his age, based on the fact that we know that he was 40 years old when the story of the spies happened, and now he's 45, and 38 of those years were the Jews wandering around the desert, and 7 years remaining teaches us that it took Joshua, some of the numbers here, that it took Joshua 7 years in order to conquer the land of Israel. And by the way, it will take another 7 years for Joshua to do all the map, split up the geography, make sure everyone gets the correct location that they need to. So that's the famous, interesting Rashi from this verse. Okay, let's go on. So I'll start back from the beginning of verse 10. Va'ata now. Hashem made me live. 45 years since the story of the spies happened. That Hashem spoke this. Moshe to Moshe, that took the Jews to the desert. And now, now I'm 85-year-old man at this time. And I'm still strong. I'm still strong like the 40-year-old guy I was in the times of Moshe. I had strength when I went to spy out the land of Israel. My strength then and my strength now, Muhammad, to go to war, lots of beloved to come and go, and I can now conquer. Therefore, leave it to me, because as I told you in past classes, that they are dividing up Israel even to many areas which it didn't conquer yet, and it will be the job of the people that are giving it to conquer it. And he says, this big troublesome city where there's major giants, the city of Hebron, leave it to me, and I will come in and I will conquer it. Ba'ata. And by the way, some of the commentaries say, he says, I'm also as spiritual as I was back then, because you need Hashem's presence, obviously, to succeed. So I'm the same man I was then, and that I stayed strong through all the bad news with the spies. I'm still the same person now. V'ata now, verse 12. Tanali Sahara, as I give me this mountain. Asher dibra Hashem b'yemahu, that Hashem spoke on that day. Ki'ata shamata b'yemahu, because you heard on that day, Ki'anakim sham, there are giants, there are very strong people over there. V'arim gedoylais b'tzurais, and there are cities that are fortified. So it was a strong, dangerous city to conquer Hebron. Ulay Hashem oisi, maybe Hashem will be with me. He's a humble man. He's saying maybe God will be with me. Rashtim, and I will drive them out and I will inherit it as Hashem has spoken. And Yeshua blessed him, and he gave Hebron to this man, Kalev, the son of Yefuna, as an inheritance. Now there's a little bit of a problem with this, because we're going to learn that the 6 cities that will be for people to run away from when they killed someone by accident, right? When someone killed by mistake, they have to run to the 6 cities of refuge. They're cities where the Levites will live, and one of those cities are Hebron. So how? And we know Yeshua is from the tribe of Yehuda. So I don't get it. Is Hebron going to Kalev, or is Hebron going to go to the tribe of Levi, who will be a city of refuge? Which one is it? So one of the commentaries I saw today want to explain that Hebron itself actually went to the the Levites, and Kalev got the whole section around the city of Hebron. Verse 14. Therefore, Hebron will be given to this man called Kalev ben Yefuna, Haknizi, who's the stepson of Knaz, the Nachla's inheritance, Adiyem until this day. Because he fulfilled the will of Hashem and went followed Hashem. Last verse, an interesting Rashi here. Shem Hebron, the fun name. What was the name before Hebron became Hebron? It was called Kiryas Arba. It was called Kiryas Arba, the city of Arba. Now, why is it called Kiryas Arba? So we're going to give you, I think, 2 or 3. We're going to give you 3 reasons why it's called Kiryas Arba, and one of them is very interesting, which we can learn something from. So he gave him Hebron, used to be called Kiryas Arba. Ha'adam hagadol ba'anokim. So the simple meaning is, why Kirya means the city that belongs to a man called Arba. Who was Arba? The city of Arba. Who was Arba? He was Adam Hagadol Ba'anokim. He was the greatest of the giants. Who? What does that mean? He was the head of the giants. So there were 3 famous giants there. Rashi tells us. We know Talmai. What are their names here? Their names are Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmi. And he was the father. He was the father of these three giants. So they named the city after the father of these three famous giants, and they called it the city of Arba. And he would now have to go and conquer it from this man, from Kiryas Arba, and he would have to go conquer it from him. Another way to explain it is the city of four is that if you include the father with the three son giants, there are four giants here. So it's a city of the four giants. That's what Rashi says it has its name. And then Rashi says, brings another interesting reason. He says that who is the Adam Hagadol? Who is the great man? Not the head of the giants. The great man is Avram Avinu. Is actually referring to Avram, who's buried there in Kiryas Arba, who's buried in Hebron, in that area. Why is he mentioning Avram here? And Rashi says a very interesting thing. He says that we know when you read the Chumash and you see the story when Avram came to bury his wife Sarah in Hebron, right? In the Marza Machpelah where they're buried. What happened was he says, I want land for my wife. And they said, oh my gosh, there's a Nasi Alikim B'Sachenu, there's a leader of God in our midst. And they gave tremendous respect to Avram Avinu. Because of that unbelievable respect that they gave a very long time ago, hundreds of years earlier, Hashem had to pay them out their reward and allow them to live there, to give them back credit, even though maybe they deserve to be chased out. Because they gave honor and respect to Avram, Hashem delayed the Jews conquering Israel to allow them to live there enough, to benefit enough from the land because of the respect that they had to Avram Avinu. Fascinating, very interesting. Because of that, Hashem delayed the Jews in the desert for 38 years. Very interesting. It wasn't just because of the sins of the Jewish people that they had to delay. Also, that was a general mission that the Jews needed to get to 38 years later to allow the people who gave respect to Avram to live in Israel for a longer period in time, maybe 45 more years, until Kalev will get there and conquer it from them, to pay them back the reward for showing this tremendous respect to Avram Avinu. We finally finished today's chapter. The land rested from the war. There was finally peace.